Welcome back to the Word on Fire Show. I'm Matthew Petrusek, Senior Director of the Word on Fire Institute and the host of the Word on Fire Show. Thank you for joining us. From Bishop Barron's very first social media post close to 20 years ago, he and Word on Fire as a whole have recognized that the online world is a rough and tumble place. While most over the years have interacted with our content with charity and respect, even if they disagree, there's always been a gallery of trolls who traffic in insults and profanity and are only interested in taking potshots at the ministry rather than engaging in conversation. And so it goes. That's just part of the price of entry into the digital world, especially when evangelization is your goal. The internet culture, however, seems to have taken a dark turn recently. Whatever limited restraint people used to show in their online interactions seems to have evaporated in a toxic cloud of mob fueling and mob-fueled rage, replete with distortions, deceptions, and sometimes even explicit calls for violence. Exacerbated by the rise of the use of AI, bots, and anonymous accounts often based in foreign countries, it is increasingly difficult to know with whom you are engaging online or what their motives are. And sadly, physical threats from online sources are now also something we must take very seriously. So how should we move forward from here? Is it still possible to make evangelical headway in this increasingly noxious online environment? If so, what principles should guide the way? Here to discuss the challenges and possible solutions to the current state of the online world is Bishop Robert Barron. Bishop, welcome back to the studio.
Hey, Matt. Good to be with you again.
So today we're looking at the dark turn that internet culture seems to have taken recently, and what we can do to constructively respond to it from a Catholic perspective. Before we get into all that, what have you been up to recently?
I'm not sure when this show will come out, but as we record it, I'm getting ready for a little celebration of my 40th anniversary as a priest. Kind of snuck up on me, but some of the folks in the Chancery are planning a cool trip up to St. Paul, first to visit one of my favorite religious buildings in the country, which is the Cathedral of St. Paul. And we're going to visit there, have a tour, and then I'm going to say Mass. And then we're getting the bus, and we're going to the Twins game. So the Twins are playing, I forget whom they're playing, but I think it's like 12:30 is a Twins game. So a little liturgy and a little baseball in honor of my 40th anniversary. So that's coming up as we record these words.
Beautiful. I remember you got to throw the first pitch at a Twins game.
Yeah, a couple years ago. Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. And early congratulations to you, Bishop.
Well, thank you.
Well, let's now turn to a sad topic, a dark topic, the viciousness of internet culture we're seeing in real time sort of emerge. We're going to look at some of the possible causes and then how can we respond to that. But before we do, Bishop, take us back in time to nearly 20 years ago when you just started posting online. What was it like in interacting with other people in the online environment at that time?
Yeah, I mean, it was confrontational, I suppose, would be the right word. And I've told this story before when I started with YouTube videos, and I knew nothing about them. I just did these things. We put them up, and I was happy when there were 200 people watch them. And I discovered that you could comment. I didn't even know you could do that. And the comments were, typically negative because people do come on to say, oh, how wonderful that was, but not typically. They love to have an argument. So at first, I was kind of put off by it. I was surprised. But in those days, I would engage people because they seemed like real people who had a real concern or question. And I liked the fact that I had a little traction. If they raised a question, well, all right, I can respond to that. If someone just hates religion, but they're off in the corners of the culture, I never hear from them, I have no traction. But hey, it gave me a little traction. So I kind of enjoyed that. And I did a lot of it in those days. And I do think it's partially responsible for the success of Word on Fire that I was on there. We're putting new things up a lot, and I was interacting with people. And I've often said to colleagues who want to get in that world, that's a good combination. You got to be fresh and you got to be interactive.
Oh, it was totally innovative at the time. No one else was doing it.
Right. So I think that was really a good thing. And it was just less insane. I think it was confrontational, but you didn't get the sense you were dealing with insane people or I think we'll get to this, with carefully orchestrated campaigns of opposition. You didn't have that so much in the beginning. So I didn't mind. I kind of enjoyed it, actually, getting into to the, it's the French called the joie de combat, the joy of the battle. And so I think it was confrontational, but not insane.
What other platforms besides YouTube were you on when you first started?
In the earliest days, YouTube's one I remember.
Were you on Facebook?
Yeah, eventually, but that was a little while later. The people, the Word on Fire staff would know better, like the Instagram.
You did Reddit.
I did Reddit. That's right.
Yeah.
That was fairly early. I've done 3 of those maybe. Now we could do another one. I don't know if that's become dysfunctional. It probably has, but it was, it was fairly brutal. You go. It was. If people don't know Reddit, they ask me anything. You just go on there and I would field any question, and then of course people could respond, and you have to wade through an awful lot of just obscenity and stupidity and all that. But I still thought it was a useful exercise, and I learned a lot. I did some videos, I think, and articles about that, what I learned from Reddit. I'm like, here, you could distill pretty readily. Here are the 4 or 5 major objections that people have.
Yeah, that was when the New Atheists were in there.
Yeah, right. And they had lots of devotees on the ground, in that space. So no, I was willing to do that. A lot of people said to me, "Why are you wasting your time?" And all these crazy people, and it's so obscene, and why? But I just felt, it was still a useful exercise in those days.
It was the only place to reach those people.
Right. Yes. And I always felt that my model there was my hero, Thomas Aquinas, who, now admittedly a higher level than Reddit, but I mean, would do what he called quadlibetal questions. Quadlibet means whatever you want, right? So he would just open himself to whatever question you have. And believe me, Aquinas did get irreverent questions and, kind of offbeat things and all that. He wasn't dealing, I don't think, with the obscenity of Reddit, but I took that as kind of my example of, all right, I'll just ask me whatever you want.
Well, it's been close to 20 years since you started doing that. Of
2007 was the first YouTube video.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, so next year will be 20 years.
Many things have changed, including your schedule. You are exponentially busier now with much less time to be able to engage people online. But even to the extent that you are able to engage in a limited way now, what kinds of changes have you seen over these close to 20 years in internet culture?
One is just personally the nastiness level and the tendency of these internet mobs to form. And that's been one of the most disagreeable parts of it. I've talked a lot over the years about René Girard and Girard's theory of scapegoating violence. And part of that is this tendency of mobs to form. So when a scapegoat emerges, there's tension within the community. That one of the best ways to create this ersatz sense of community is we all come together in blaming, this person or that group. Well, mobs can happen easily enough in the real world. On the internet space, they can happen like that because people are all connected. And so there's, videos emerge or someone said something that we don't like. And then one person attacks and, I want to get on that. And all I have to do is go, yeah, that's right. And boom. And before you know it, these mobs on the internet can form, which are really awful. And they participate in exactly the Girardian dynamic. The people participating in the mobs get a kind of sense of community, but it's so dysfunctional and it'll fall apart like that, and it's mean-spirited and so on. But we so respond to scapegoating violence. We love it. We love when a scapegoat emerges. And the internet, it's the devil loves that because it's perfect. It's a perfect field, for the Girardian dynamics to play themselves out. So that's happened. But a second thing, and I think in your opening remark, you made reference to it, is the way these mobs are now kind of orchestrated or even artificially created.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what can happen is maybe one person has got a little financial support, even support from high-level institutions, can make a negative comment. Let's say there's a video of mine that they don't like. Okay, negative comment. Now go to your AI and say, make 1,000 similar comments to this. Well, AI, that's easy peasy. I mean, AI can create a screenplay in about 10 seconds, right? So make 1,000 variations of this remark. And then through bots and through burner accounts and these various things, suddenly, boom, those 1,000 comments will appear. Yeah. So the trouble is, people will look at the video and then, we all love a car wreck, right? So, what's going on in there's negative comments. I see thousands. But that could be one person who simply orchestrated these, That to me is so gross and dysfunctional. And the end result, you want my honest opinion? I wouldn't have said this 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I would have said, no, comments, that's good. Get in there and see what people are saying, and maybe you can contribute. And, if I were king of the universe, one of my first moves would be no more commenting on the internet. I think this just become fetid and dysfunctional. And it's so marked by these artificially generated mobs that it just doesn't contribute. I would say, look, watch a video. Fine, watch a video, and then make up your own mind. Maybe don't pay attention to all this nonsense in the comment boxes. Yeah, I remember, man, this is some years ago. I heard Joe Rogan say this, like the most popular podcaster in the world, right? This is some years ago. He said, I never look at comments. And I stopped reading comments years ago because he was onto all these dynamics. Mm-hmm. Jordan Peterson, the same thing. He said, we never look at comments. It just, wears you down, and it contributes nothing to truth and goodness. And so I'm in that position now, really. I just think that's dysfunctional.
I think it's something really important for our audience to understand, and it's happened to you, it's happening to you in real time, is that on most social media, on all social media platforms right now, it's highly likely that most of the comments are not real people or one person working through all of these bots.
And I don't know if people know that, so maybe this is good to advertise it a bit. But
awareness campaign.
No, that was a surprise to me when it was first explained to me. And so I'd be aware of that fact, but I would say generally avoid comment boxes and watch a video, listen to an argument, make up your own mind about it. And don't worry about these mobs that are just following the Girardian dynamic, which is nothing but bad.
And there's an additional element to the Girardian dynamic is it's now monetized. So there's a financial incentive to get clicks, to get eyeballs, and mobs do that well.
Which is terrible when you think that I'm going to artificially generate just all this negativity so that I can make more money off of this thing. It's bad at so many levels, right?
What about digging deeper into the anonymity of the internet and social media? How do you see that affecting the character of the online environment?
Well, yeah, that's part of it. The ease of making a negative comment. I've said this before, but when I was a young guy, someone reads an article. I don't like that article. I'm going to write a letter to the editor. And so you got to sit down at in those days, your typewriter, and you have to type out a letter. You got to find an envelope and a stamp, and you got to know what's the address to that thing. And if you go through all of that hassle and then you send it successfully to the newspaper, some editor or sub-editor will pick it up and it's just a crazy rant and throw it away, right? And maybe a handful of good, articulate objections make their way into a newspaper editorial page. Okay, that's fairly functional. What's dysfunctional is, I don't like that. In my mom's basement. Enter. And then, 24/7, 365, all over the world, that comment is just there. Someone else in his mom's basement sees it. There's nothing that limits it so that it might even approach something like responsibility.
Right, exactly.
And then the anonymity thing too, that, I can just do this and with impunity. At least with the letter to the editor, you had to sign the darn thing so they know who you are. So no, that's contributed to the dysfunction of it.
You know this figure well, the character of Thrasymachus in Plato's Republic.
Yeah, in the Republic, right.
Who argues, and I think it's fair to say that Socrates has some difficulty in encountering that. Look, the only reason that people behave is because they're scared of getting caught and punished if they don't.
Right.
What do you think the state of the online world, especially as it's connected to anonymity, says about Thrasymachus' argument? Is he actually right? If people can get away with doing something malicious, they'll do it? Oh, no,
I remember I read The Republic for the first time in college, and I always liked Thrasymachus, meaning I don't agree with him, but he's like Machiavelli.
Yeah,
when you read Machiavelli, who's a darn good writer and is right about so much, meaning he was really clear-eyed about how human beings actually behave. Now, he makes the step to say, now use that to get what all that. I don't approve of that, but I mean, a really clear-eyed assessor of the human condition. Well, Thrasymachus is a bit like that too. that, hey, come on, don't give me all this justice nonsense and, doing the good. And here's how people actually behave, And sure, I think he's largely right about that. And I'll speak as a Christian. Plato didn't know about this, but we know about original sin that has worked its way, and the effects of it has worked its way into our systems. And so, a lot of us are like Thrasymachus. Actually, go back to the ring of Gyges, right, which comes in the that's what Tolkien is playing with. If you had a ring, if this ring of mine, if it could render me invisible, what would I do? What would I do? Would I do anything? I'll never get caught. I'll murder, I'll rape, I'll steal, I'll do anything because I'll never get caught. Would I do it? And like a Thrasymachus would say, well, yeah, of course he would. Of course he would. Machiavelli, yeah, and you should. That would give you a huge advantage. So is that the anonymity of the internet? It's like we're in the ring of Gyges, as I can do all this stuff, and well, who even knows? Now, the internet world, God knows, you can usually be found out in some ways, but at least there's the illusion of anonymity that contributes to this negativity.
So again, maybe playing devil's advocate here, we could say, I recognize the dumpster fire, to use a popular term, that is the online world. It's full of misinformation, it's full of disinformation, lies. But the only way to counter that is to be on the front lines and to be commenting. And so if we were to shut down the anonymity, if we were to shut down people's ability to comment, then it would just get that much worse. You see any merit to that argument?
Oh, maybe. I think if I were king of the universe, I would outlaw comments. But I'd say I love having the forum that you can put a video up, you can make an argument, you can publicize your views pretty readily. That's all to the good, And if the commenting could be somehow controlled, now that's the trouble. It really can't be. But no, and I want to emphasize too, Matt, people might think I'm a hypocrite because I use social media all the time. It is good. It is good. And heck, I think we've used it for very good purposes at Word on Fire. And I also think this rise in affiliation among young people, I think the internet outreach of the churches has had a lot to do with it.
Absolutely.
That we've been able to reach younger people, not just young, everyone now, in a way that we couldn't otherwise. So, no, thank God for the internet, and I've used it indeed. It's just that it's like anything, it's the devil. It's original sin. It's like anything good can go bad, right? Everything good has a shadow side, and it'll be used by the dark powers, So the same thing has happened to the internet world. It's good, but it carries a shadow.
Well, let's now dig into the Catholic intellectual tradition and moral tradition more deeply to look at some tools and how we can move forward in this environment. So let's go to the four cardinal virtues, temperance, fortitude, justice, and prudence.
Yeah.
Bishop, let's start with temperance. What is temperance, and how might we be able to apply it to the online world?
I would say it's a control of your passions so that the achievement of justice can become possible. It holds off internal threats to justice. So by justice here, I mean kind of doing the right thing, like rendering to each his due, right? But one of the obstacles to that is my own interiority, my emotions and all that are off kilter. And so my intemperance is preventing me from doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. Think of, again, someone, I know I shouldn't do this, but my passions are such that I do it anyway. It's St. Paul, right? The good that I would do, it's that I don't do. The evil that I would avoid, that's what I do. Who will deliver me from this body of death? So intemperance produces that problem. I think there's a lot of intemperance on the internet. That the right thing, to say something that's true and indeed loving to someone versus, I'm so angry and I'm going to let that person know. Well, that's an intemperate, frame of soul that leads to trouble.
So we oftentimes also think about temperance with regard to, fasting from food or drink. Do you think it's ever a good idea to completely fast from going online?
Yes, I do. And, it's one of the most interesting reforms in seminary education. This now goes back about 20 years. It was Archbishop Chaput had a lot to do with the reform of this whole thing, to have what we now call the propedeutic year, right? Before you even enter into seminary formation formally, there's a year, and they often use the term of detox. You have to detox a young person from this internet culture, because part of the propedeutic, and I would say to a person, because I talk to these young kids, what they remember the most and appreciate the most about the propedeutic year. They study, they pray and all this, but what they remember most is they took my phone away and how my whole life changed for the better, you know? So yes, I do think at times real abstention from it is a good thing to learn a more temperate approach to it. So again, I'm not recommending just get rid of your cell phone and let's go back to the, Luddite years of the 1970s. We got to find a way to deal creatively and properly with these things. But yes, something I've talked about during the last 2 Lents now, one of my resolutions is 1 day a week, put the phone away.
The whole day?
Yeah. And I put it in the drawer and I have a protocol with my assistant in case of an emergency, how to reach me, Could be the bishop of diocese, you have to be in touch with what's going on. But yeah, I endeavored, I didn't always work, but endeavored 1 day a week, put the phone in a drawer. Just don't use it.
I think detox is the right word because it's now been shown empirically that the devices and the content are addictive.
Absolutely. The machines are designed that way and we know it. We know it, and we all experience it. I'm addicted to them.
Yeah,
they're all designed to be that way, and it's wickedly clever how that was done to us. And I remember I didn't get my first cell phone until I was 45. We all lived our lives without them, and we all traveled. It's amazing to me now. I think all the traveling I did, all these plane trips.
How did I get lost all the time?
Yeah,
right?
and I relied on a payphone. And finding if my ride wasn't there, well, I better find a payphone and call the number
or asking someone for directions.
Yeah,
imagine.
I remember vividly being in the car and you have a piece of paper like, okay, turn right at the red light, and then when the big tree is that the big tree,
Yeah.
Well, we all did it.
Yeah.
Well, and also we were all better navigators in those days. I was much better. Now I'm hopeless. I'm hopeless. In my own diocese, like if I'm. This happens in my diocese because much of it is rural, and I'll be in a place sometimes that's so far away from cell towers that I start to go home and it's not working, and I'm like, now what do I do? And I start, where's the sun?
Yeah, at east.
I am, or like, where's Orion? And so I'm hopeless at that. I forget where I was going with that now, but it's just living without them, I think is wise. I think that is a temperate thing to do, is have some abstention from them.
How about then a fortitude? What is fortitude, and how might we be able to apply that virtue to being online?
Courage, having the strength. And if temperance holds off trouble coming from the inside, fortitude holds off trouble from the outside. So I want to do the right thing, but there's an external threat to me. And what I need, therefore, is courage to face that down. Are there threats coming from people online? Yeah, and I better fit in. And if I say this, they'll get mad at me. And and you need courage to say and do the right thing. Are you always putting down what you really believe is true? Or are you just contributing to a Girardian mob? Mm-hmm. Are you responding in real love to someone? You're willing their good? Or are you just acting out of, your own resentment? So, and I think also the courage to resist a mob. Mobs formed. We love mobs. That's what Girard understood in our fallen state. We love mobs. It's like looking at a car wreck. I mean, we're drawn to some of these terrible things. Mobs forming. I want to be part of that. Oh, yeah, I read that too. And do I have the courage to resist that? And the story, by the way, that René Girard loved was Jesus and the woman caught in the act of adultery. It's a perfect example. Right? The mob is formed. And now, Lord, what's your judgment here? How about the one, among you without sin? What was he doing there? He was breaking up the enthusiasm of the mob, right? So do I have the courage to resist that? That's where fortitude comes in.
How about the courage to post as yourself online? Do you think that applies?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. That would require fortitude, yeah.
How about then justice? You already briefly touched on justice, but from a virtue perspective, what is justice and how does that play out?
Yeah, I to put it colloquially, I think doing the right thing. I think that every moment of every day, you're faced with that decision. Am I going to do the right thing right now? What's the call of justice? And go back to Plato, it's rendering to each his due, which means, I walk into a room and there's another human being there and I'll say, good morning, how are you? But what am I doing? It's an act of justice. I'm rendering what's due, namely respect. If I walk in and, brush past somebody or they say hello to me and I ignore them, that's an act of injustice. Now, it's very simple. It's not world-changing, but it's an act of injustice. right now, we're both engaging in an act of justice because we've committed to doing this program, to record it. You've done requisite work. I've, done some preparation for it, and we're now executing that act. It's an act of justice. If I were to say to you, no, I'm not going to do it, I just don't feel like it, and I'm not sick or anything, I'm not going to do it, or you didn't prepare. You didn't prepare anything for this. Well, those would be acts of injustice, right? So I would put it that way. It's rendering to each his due, or doing the right thing. Now, internet world, before you go, send or enter, ask that question. Am I doing the right thing here? Am I saying what I think is true? Am I doing what I think is right? Am I engaging here in an act of love, which is willing the good of the other? Now, it doesn't mean namby-pamby. If someone's saying something really stupid and dangerous and you want to correct that, that's an act of love. You're willing their good, But it's an examination of conscience that's required. Mm-hmm. Am I really doing that? I think it's a darn good question to ask before you hit, and maybe even have like a little sign by your computer to remind you, I put justice or love or something, before I hit that button. Because we do it so often out of the opposite of love and justice, right? So I think that's a very relevant consideration.
Under this broad umbrella of justice, Bishop, can you speak a little bit about the sins that particularly apply to sins of speech?
Yeah.
A category I think is oftentimes completely elided. Can we sin with what we say?
Of course. And I mean, one, we talk about lying, telling an untruth, but calumny is something that is defined in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. When you are willingly and maliciously attacking someone's reputation, that you are trying to destroy that person's reputation by telling a falsehood, that's calumny. And that's a very serious sin. It's bearing false witness, right? It's a violation of one of the 10 Commandments. And it's a very serious sin. And talking about wounding, look at young people on the internet. So we've been talking more about, like people our age, older people, but gosh, young people, may I say, especially young women, are deeply affected by what I call calumny, which is the reputation destruction. And people love doing that. And and the internet provides a marvelous forum for that. I'm going to do everything I can to undermine you and to wreck your reputation in the minds of others. That's a really serious moral crime. And I think preachers should preach about it. I think the church should talk about it more. It's where a lot of sinning is going on. And we can go to all the traditional places we talk about sin. But here's a new one, is the internet has provided a terrible field for this kind of moral dysfunction.
And it's not only just about what you say, but also what you repost. I think that's oftentimes because it looks like an endorsement of what someone else has said.
Right. And if it's always an examination of conscience. Why am I doing this? I mean, can you repost something you think, hey, that's really good. That's insightful, or that's interesting, or that's helpful. And I want more people to know about that. Great. But no, I'm reposting that because I hate that person too. Yeah. And I want you to know what a jerk that person is. And I'm doing everything I can to undermine his reputation. Yeah. That's serious moral business. And I don't think, I'll speak, accusing myself, that we don't talk about that sufficiently as moral leaders in the church.
What about, and this gets a little bit more nuanced, then we'll move into prudence, but thinking something might be true, but not necessarily knowing it's true and reposting it, or knowing it's true, but not really having a good moral reason to share it. Are those also potentially sins?
And right. Maybe it is true, and it's true, but why am I doing it? Am I doing it out of love, willing the good of the other?
Yeah, that's right.
And maybe something is true, and I want other people to know this, and it's an important thing. Okay, fine. But, it's true, but I'm going to repost it because I hate that person, and I want that truth about him or her to be better known. You got to examine your conscience. Why are you doing the things you're doing? Think of the internet as a moral arena. I think that's important.
Yeah. And Bishop, finally, prudence. What is prudence and how does it apply to the online world?
Well, if justice is kind of, I always think of that's, doing the right thing. Temperance protects you from inner trouble, fortitude from outer trouble. Prudence is the virtue that allows you practically to make justice a reality, to make a more abstract principle into a reality. In this particular situation, with this set of circumstances, what is the right thing to do? So you could say abstractly justice is doing the right thing, or render each his due, or it's the mean between extremes, or whatever. Fine, but all right, here and now, what is the right thing to do? Prudence determines that. It's an intellectual virtue, Aquinas will say, because it's based on memory. It's based on how you've assessed similar situations. Mm-hmm. So it's a practical and intellectual virtue. I would say the internet. I've been in these battles before. I've faced opposition before. I've done kind of bad things before, So in this situation, what's the right path? Maybe the right path, the prudential thing is to say, delete. Maybe it's not enter, it's delete.
Yeah.
Maybe it's, I know what I just wrote is so clever and it's so funny and oh boy. But it's not the prudent thing for me to be doing right now. It's not the path of justice that's open for me right now. So no, I think that's in some ways it's the queen of the virtues because it's where the rubber meets the road.
Right.
It's where you concretize your moral convictions. So again, I think the internet it's an arena, and the virtues, they're not obsolete. On the contrary, those virtues are all at play in this.
And finally, Bishop, as the founder of Word on Fire, and we do most of our work online, what's your assessment of the future of the online world? Do we have reason to hope, despair?
It's a good question. I don't know if I can be that good at predicting. Look, it's you're never going to put it back in the tube. I mean, this world exists, and it'll always exist in some form. My hope, man, maybe it's more of a hope than a prediction, is that people will see just how awful the negative side has become, and they'll find a way to push past it. Maybe through some disciplining and not censoring, but maybe a self-censoring will kick in when people realize how dysfunctional, and maybe we can, in our own small way, contribute to it. The more people know about these comment boxes and where all that's coming from, maybe they'll say like, oh yeah, I'm not going to get in that world. I'm not going to be part of that mob, or I'm not going to pay attention to that. If more people could do the Joe Rogan thing or Jordan Peterson and just say, I'm done with comments. I'm not playing that. Peterson used a line. I've used it many times since. He said, the chattering of demons. You go into those comment boxes, it's the chattering of demons. Don't be seduced by them. Yeah. Don't be drawn into it, because it's a very apt comparison. Because oh my God, what are they saying? What are they? I gotta respond to that.
I gotta respond. Yeah,
right. And so then now you're part of the chattering of demons. Ignore them. You know that I'm a big Simpsons fan. Remember years ago, the episode when these great advertising figures came to life in Springfield, and they started, and the answer was, don't look at them. Yeah, right. Oh my God, oh no. And then they were terrifying. Yeah. But then I think it was Lisa, of course, breaks the code. He goes, don't look at them. And the minute they did, they all just fall over. Well, that's the internet in a way. There's the com boxes. Don't look at them. Don't read them. That's a complete waste, and there's more than a waste of time. It's dangerous. Then they'll go away. Maybe that's my hope, more than an expectation, that they'll go away if we learn to ignore them.
Well, if I could give a plug for the Word on Fire Institute before we move to our listener question, that's what we seek to do, is to preserve the original form of commenting on the Institute platform. We have thousands of people active on the platform commenting
so what do you
under
do?
Their real names.
Okay. Yeah.
It requires a lot of moderation and a lot of engagement with the members, and we have to have a clear goal. What we like to think of it as like a university classroom, where you're going to allow lots of different kinds of conversations, but you have a specific goal in mind for those conversations. So as long as you keep that goal in mind, that helps keep the comments moderated and directed. Good. So for anybody watching who wants to comment, you can join the Word on Fire Institute.
And it won't be the chattering of demons.
No, it will not. It will not. It's been exercised. All right, well, it's now time for our listener question. Today we have Taylor asking for a concise definition of the meaning of respect from the Catholic intellectual tradition.
Okay.
Hey, Bishop Barron, would you please define respect? In our home, we teach our children that every human being deserves two things, love and respect. We taught them the definition of love that we learned from you, willing the good of the other.
Good.
Could you please provide an equally succinct definition for respect? Thank you, and God bless you.
That's good. I don't know if I can off the top of my head. Something like the acknowledgement of the worth and value of someone might be what respect means. So, right, love is to will the good of the other. Respect, to acknowledge the worth and value of someone. It's not as good as Thomas Aquinas' definition of love, but that's, I guess, how we'd see it. That's good, though. I like the two things you're talking about, both love and respect. Because respect doesn't mean, that you can't correct someone. You can respect. In fact, the more you respect someone, the more you might want to get them back on the right moral path. So it's not like this wokest understanding of, you got your opinion, I got my opinion, and I'll never impose myself on you. No, if you respect someone, you acknowledge their worth and value, well, then you want them to be living a morally upright life. So I kind of like that the more I think about it, acknowledging the value and worth of another.
Well, thanks so much, Taylor, for reaching out to us. If you'd like to ask Bishop Barron a question for a future Word on Fire show, please visit askbishopbarron.com. Again, it's askbishopbarron.com. We do always love to hear from you. Well, thanks again for another great conversation, Bishop.
All right. Thanks, man. Always a joy.
Looking forward to the next one. That does it for us today. Thanks for joining us on the Word on Fire show. If you're interested in learning more about how Word on Fire can help you grow closer to Christ, become a better evangelist with and for others, and work for the common good, consider joining the Word on Fire Institute. Check us out at institute.wordonfire.org. That's institute.wordonfire.org. And we'll see you next time.